everyone, welcome back to Library. Last week, with Lions and Liars, we read the first chapter, and our buddy Frederick was being compared to being a flea on a meerkat's bottom in the pecking order of lions being the top most cool, and then meerkat, and then a flea on a meerkat's bottom. And Joel wasn't too happy about that, especially since it was his friend who was saying that about him. And so Freddie was feeling like, you know what, I'm going on vacation. I'm not going to let any of this bother me. And Joel said, you never have good luck. And I think Joel might be right, because chapter 2, Hurricane Hernando. So let's read to find out what happens to our buddy Freddie in Lions and Liars. I've never even heard of Hurricane Hernando, Frederick said later that afternoon. That's because you don't watch the news, Sarah Ann said, because you're so self-involved that you don't care about the world around you. Sarah Ann was Frederick's big sister. She was 13, and she was self-righteous. The two of them stood in the living room. The Weather Channel was on full blast, and Sarah Ann was explaining why their parents had decided to cancel the vacation at the last minute. Apparently, it had something to do with a storm spiraling in the Atlantic. Hurricane Hernando, Frederick repeated, putting his hands on his head and gazing at the TV in dismay. But we're supposed to have our vacation. I need my vacation. He had been looking forward to his vacation for weeks. It was like there was a strawberry daiquiri sitting on a table in the middle of the desert, and he'd been crawling toward it dehydrated, and he had just made it to the table only to realize it was a mirage. Oh, yes, that's obviously the important thing here, Sarah Ann said, her voice rising. I'm sure the people who are evacuating their homes and hoping they don't die are worried about Frederick Fredrickson's missing his vacation. Are you being funny? Frederick said, lowering his arms and turning to look at her. Sarah Ann perched on the edge of the coffee table and crossed her legs. Obviously, she said. Because your face makes it hard to tell, Frederick said. Sarah Ann sprang up. She grabbed his ears and pulled him so close he could see her tonsils as she yelled, What's wrong with my face? Mrs. Fredrickson came into the living room, carrying the yellow emergency flashlight. Don't grab his head, she snapped and shooed Sarah Ann out of the way. He is injured. She clicked the light on and pointed into Frederick's eyes, grabbing his chin so he couldn't squirm away. Hold still, Freddie, she said. I'm checking to see if your pupils dilate. That blow could have given you a concussion. The nurse at school already did that, Frederick squinted. His mom pointed the beam away from him so that he could see her. Really? She asked. He nodded. Huh. She tapped his chest with the light. I knew that was a good school. Then she headed back to the kitchen to put the flashlight away. Frederick followed right on her heels. Sarah Ann followed him right on his heels. I think you're making a bad decision, he told his mom. Okay, Mrs. Fredrickson said, not looking back at him. Okay, Frederick repeated. Okay, I heard you, Mrs. Fredrickson said. You think Dad and I are making a bad decision. She stuffed the flashlight in the thing drawer. But you're wrong. You're not going. You're not. You need to get over it. She closed the drawer. Sarah Ann leaned against the kitchen counter and crossed her arms, smirking at Frederick. Frederick tugged his blood-stained t-shirt straight and shot an I loathe every atom of your being face at his sister before ignoring her. He was going to have to be careful here, reasoning with his mom. Frederick knew, in an intellectual way, that his mom loved him and Sarah Ann, but being loved by her was like being loved by a bear, and not like a teddy bear or Pooh Bear, more like a grizzly bear, one that had just gotten its paws caught in a trap and was tearing through the forest looking for a hunter it could rip to shreds. Mom, Frederick said, but he snapped his mouth closed. He had heard the beginning of a whine in his voice. 10-year-olds did not whine. He took a deep breath and explained in a calm voice. I've just been looking forward to this vacation for a really, 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 really long time, he said. It's been a bad day. A bad, bad day, and I need to go on vacation. He folded his hands together prayerfully. I need a daiquiri in the worst kind of way. You and me both, kiddo, his mom said. She opened the refrigerator and peered inside. The refrigerator had a note magneted to it. A note with a list of all the last minute things they need to lock, check, and turn off tonight before they got in the car with their suitcases. It was also the refrigerator that only had pickle spears, horseradish, and cokes in it, because that morning Frederick's dad had trashed everything that would spoil while they were away for a week. Mrs. Fredrickson slammed the refrigerator shut without taking anything out. But we don't need to get caught in a hurricane, she said with a sigh. It might not even hit us, Frederick said. It's not pointing directly at Port Verde Shoals, his mom admitted, but storms can turn without warning. Probably the weather people are exaggerating. Probably the weather people are exaggerating, Frederick reasoned. It might not be a bad storm. Category 5, Sarah Ann said under her breath. Frederick wants to drown us all. I'm not worried about drowning so much as getting really seasick, Mrs. Frederick said, wrinkling her nose. Gah! Sarah Ann stomped her foot. Don't you think it's pretty selfish of you worrying about getting nauseous when there are people who are evacuating? The word you're looking for is nauseated, their mother said. And you're being self-righteous, which is nauseous. I am not, Sarah Ann said. I'm Sarah Ann, Mrs. Fredrickson interrupted in a mild voice, her eyebrows lifting in feigned surprise. You are being very. She paused a moment, and the air in the kitchen seemed to crackle. Unattractive, Mrs. Fredrickson finished. Sarah Ann paled. Ever since she'd become a teenager, Sarah Ann was obsessed with how she looked. If someone told her that her left arm was unattractive, she'd probably chop it off. I am not, Sarah Ann said in a strangled voice. I am not being unattractive. Unattractive red splotches erupted on her neck. I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm being a good person. And neither one of you appreciates me. Sarah Ann whirled around and fled. On the bright side, Mrs. Frederick said cheerfully, as if she had a perfectly normal daughter, you can go to Joel's birthday party now. It took Frederick a moment to understand what she was talking about. I don't want to go to Joel's birthday, he grumped. Yeah, I don't either, his mom said, grabbing her key ring off the counter and looping it around her finger. But it's dinner time and I'm hungry, and I bet Joel's family has food. Frederick looked around the kitchen, panicked. He didn't want to see Joel. Not now, when Joel had told him he was a flea. Not now, when he was supposed to be in the back seat of the family's car on the way to Port Verde Shoals. Not when he had told Joel he was missing his party to go on vacation. Sarah Ann, Mrs. Fredrickson called. Get ready to go. We're taking your brother to a party so we can get burgers. Couldn't you just. Frederick waved his arms, indicating the stove, the fridge, the oven. Cook something? Slowly, his mom turned to face him. Her eyes focused on him, and she seemed to be stretching taller and taller, filling up the entire kitchen. That thing you just said? She growled. Why don't you say it again? I think Mrs. Fredrickson is feeling just as angry and confused and frustrated as the kids are. But stay tuned for next week's Chapter 3, and we find out how it goes at Joel's party for Frederick Fredrickson. And thank you for reading with me. See you next time, guys.